The foreman stood up, and my world ended. Guilty. One word. 5 letters. 25 years of my life erased in a single syllable. I remember the courtroom sounds, my mother's gasp, the murmur of reporters, the scratch of a pen on paper. But what I remember most is the silence inside my own head. Like someone had pulled the plug on everything that made me me. And all that was left was this hollow shell in an expensive suit that no longer fit. I looked at my hands. These hands had drafted contracts worth hundreds of millions. These hands had shaken the hands of senators and CEOs. Now they were trembling so badly, I had to grip the edge of the defense table to keep them still. My lawyer, James Park, put his hand on my shoulder. Marcus, look at me. I couldn't. Marcus. I turned. James was pale. In 12 years of defense litigation, I'd never seen him look like that. He was the best in Manhattan, cool under pressure, surgical with witnesses, relentless with cross-examinations. But right now, he looked like a man delivering a terminal diagnosis. I'm sorry, he said quietly. The circumstantial evidence, the financial forensics, the prints on the letter opener, the motive, it was too much. I did everything I could. I know, I whispered. Because he had. And because the truth didn't matter. What mattered was that David Grant was dead in his corner office on a Tuesday night, and every piece of evidence pointed to me. The sentencing hearing was set for 2 weeks out. The judge, a woman named Patricia Lowell with a reputation for neither mercy nor delay, looked at me over her glasses and said what judges say. You'll remain in custody until sentencing. Bail is revoked given the severity of the conviction. 2 weeks. Then 25 years to life in a maximum security facility for a murder I didn't commit. They put handcuffs on me in the courtroom. The metal was cold. I remember thinking how strange it was that something so small could contain something so large. A man's entire future, his entire life, held in place by a few ounces of steel. As they led me out, I passed my mother in the gallery. She was crying. My sister Claire was holding her up. Claire looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. Not pity, not anger, but something worse. Disbelief. She still couldn't process that her brother, her straight A, law review, summa cum laude brother, was being led away in chains. I wanted to tell her, I didn't do it. But those words sound identical whether they come from the guilty or the innocent. So I said nothing. I just walked. The holding cell was 6 feet by 8. Concrete bench. Stainless steel toilet. A fluorescent light that buzzed at a frequency designed by God specifically to drive men insane. I sat on the bench and stared at the ceiling and tried to understand how my life had collapsed so completely in the span of 3 months. 3 months ago, I was Marcus Chen, senior associate at Wolf & Grant LLP, one of the most prestigious corporate law firms in the country. I had a corner office on the 42nd floor. I had a 7-figure compensation package. I had a clear path to partner. I had everything. Except I didn't. Because everything I'd built was a lie constructed on the foundation of a single unforgivable choice I'd made 4 years ago. A choice that, sitting in that cell, I could no longer run from. I thought about her every day, even before the arrest, even before the trial. Every single day for 4 years, at some unguarded moment, Elena Rossi would slip into my mind like water through a crack in a wall. Her laugh, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating, the way she said my name, Marcus, like it meant something more than a label. I'd pushed her away. I'd destroyed her. And now, sitting in a concrete box with my freedom counting down in days, I understood with perfect, terrible clarity that I deserved everything that was happening to me. Not for the murder. I didn't do that. But for what I did to her. James came to see me on the 3rd day. He brought a yellow legal pad covered in his cramped handwriting and an expression I hadn't seen before. It took me a moment to recognize it. Hope. There's something, he said, sitting across from me at the metal table in the attorney-client room. It's thin. It's a long shot. But it's something. Tell me. David Grant was killed between 9:15 and 10:30 p.m. on October 14th. The prosecution's case rests on the assumption that you were in your apartment that evening. Your phone was there. Your car was in the garage. But I've been going through security footage from every camera in a 300-mile radius, looking for anything. And he paused. James was a man who chose his words carefully, the way a surgeon chooses his incisions. He wasn't pausing for effect. He was pausing because what he was about to say changed everything. There's a hotel in Boston, the Fairmont Copley. They had a camera glitch on the lobby entrance from that night. Camera 4 was down for maintenance, but camera 7, the secondary entrance, caught partial footage. A woman checking in at 8:47 p.m. Behind her, visible for approximately 4 seconds, is a man in a charcoal overcoat carrying a leather briefcase. He slid a photograph across the table. Grainy, blurry at the edges, but clear enough. It was me. I was in Boston that night, I said slowly. I remember. I drove up for a client meeting the next morning. I checked in at 8:42 p.m., 5 minutes before this footage. The man behind the woman could be you. Same height, same build, same overcoat. But 4 seconds of a partial image from a secondary camera isn't enough for a judge. Not on its own. Then what's the hope? James leaned forward. The woman in front of you. The one checking in at 8:47. I ran her face through the hotel's guest registry cross-reference. She attended a translation conference at the Fairmont that weekend. Name, Elena Rossi. The room tilted. Elena, I said. You know her? I closed my eyes. Yes. If she can testify that she saw you at that hotel that evening, if she can place you in Boston at the time of the murder, that's your alibi. It's not partial footage and reasonable doubt. It's direct witness testimony. It's airtight. She won't help me, I said. James frowned. Why not? Because I destroyed her, James. For years ago. I stopped. The words wouldn't come. How do you explain to your lawyer that you threw away the only person who ever loved the real version of you because a 70-year-old partner told you she wasn't appropriate? It doesn't matter why, James said firmly. What matters is that she's your only shot. Without her testimony, you go to prison for 25 years. With it, we file a motion for a new trial. The judge grants it based on reasonable doubt, and we build a proper defense. Marcus, this is it. She's your only way out. They released me for 72 hours under supervision to prepare my defense. James arranged it with the court. 72 hours to convince the woman I'd betrayed to save my life. I found her apartment in Brooklyn on a tree-lined street in Park Slope. Second floor of a brownstone. Small mailbox by the door with a name written in careful handwriting. Rossi. I stood on that doorstep for 10 minutes before I knocked. 10 minutes of my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my teeth. 10 minutes of rehearsing what I'd say and abandoning each script because there were no words adequate for what I'd done. I knocked. The door opened, and there she was. Elena Rossi. For years older. For years more beautiful. Dark eyes that had always seen through me. Through the suit. Through the title. Through the performance. She was wearing a paint-stained sweater and reading glasses pushed up on her head. Behind her, I could hear the sound of a cartoon playing and a child laughing. Her face went through a sequence. Surprise. Recognition. Then something that froze the air between us. Rage. No, she said, and started to close the door. Elena, wait. Please. How did you find me? I need your help. I know what you are. I read about the trial. Murderer. I didn't do it. Elena, I swear to you. Your swears mean nothing to me, young man. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. She pushed the door harder. I put my hand on the frame. Not to force it open, just to keep it from closing. I'm going to prison, I said in a broken tone. 25 years. For something I didn't do, something we both know I can't do. And you're the only person on earth who can prove it. She stopped pushing. Her eyes searched my face the way they used to when we were together, looking for the lie beneath the words. But this time, I wasn't lying, and she could see it. At this point, I don't know what you can do or not do anymore, she replied in a voice barely audible. Please, I whispered. 5 minutes. She opened the door. Not wide. Just enough. 5 minutes. I stepped inside. The apartment was small but warm. Bookshelves lined every wall. Children's drawings were taped to the refrigerator. A pair of tiny shoes sat by the door, red sneakers with Velcro straps, scuffed at the toes. The smell of garlic and tomato sauce hung in the air. It smelled like a home, something I hadn't had in a very long time. I explained everything. The murder, the trial, the conviction, James's discovery of the hotel footage, her face as my alibi witness. She listened with her arms crossed. leaning against the kitchen counter, her expression unreadable. "So you need me to testify that you were in Boston that night?" she said flatly. "Yes. And if I do, we file a motion for a new trial. The judge grants it based on the alibi. I get released on bail. We build a real defense. And you walk free. Innocent people shouldn't be in prison, Elena." Something flickered across her face. Pain. Memory. The ghost of something she'd buried. "I went to that conference alone," she said quietly. "I remember checking in. I remember the lobby. And I remember seeing a man in a charcoal overcoat by the secondary entrance. I didn't look at his face. I didn't need to. I knew it was you from the way you stood." Her voice cracked slightly. "Even after everything, I still recognized you from 100 feet away in bad lighting." "Elena, don't." She held up a hand. "Don't you dare make this into something it isn't. I'm going to need time to think. I don't have time. Sentencing is in 11 days. That's not my problem." "You're right. It's not. But—" A small voice from the hallway interrupted us. "Mama." We both turned. A little girl stood in the doorway of what must have been a bedroom. She was tiny, barely 3 years old. Dark curly hair, wide brown eyes, and a smile that stopped my heart. My smile. She had my smile. The room dissolved. The walls, the floor, the air, all of it gone. There was nothing in the universe except this child standing in a doorway in a pair of pink pajamas, holding a stuffed rabbit by its ear, looking at me with curious, unafraid eyes. My voice broke. I couldn't finish the sentence. Elena's jaw tightened. "Yes." "How old?" "She turned 3 in August. 3 years old. August birthday. We'd been together until May." I did the math and the floor opened beneath me. "You were pregnant," I said. Yes. "You never told me." Elena's eyes were bright now, not with tears, but with something harder. Something that had been forged in 4 years of carrying this alone. "Tell you what, Marcus? You sent me a text. This isn't working. We want different things. Don't contact me again." 47 words. 47 words was all it took you to end 2 years. I was standing in my bathroom holding a positive pregnancy test when my phone buzzed with your little goodbye. The shame hit me like a physical force. I had to put my hand on the counter to steady myself. "I was wrong," I said. "Elena, I was a coward. I know. Your managing partner told you the associates' wives went to galas and sat on charity boards, not the women who translated documents in coffee shops. And you listened. She was right. That was exactly what happened. Richard Wolf had called me into his office 6 weeks before I sent that text. He'd been direct. Wolf was always direct. "Marcus, you have the potential to be the youngest partner in firm history. But potential requires sacrifice. The girl, she's not appropriate. Partners marry women who understand this world. Reconsider your priorities." And I had. God help me, I had. "I chose them over you," I said. "I chose a letterhead over the only real thing I had." "Yes, you did." Elena's voice was steady now, controlled. The voice of a woman who had processed her grief alone, in a bathroom, with a pregnancy test in one hand and a breakup text on her phone. "And I raised her alone. I worked 3 jobs when she was an infant. I moved 4 times in 2 years. I held her when she had fevers at 3 in the morning and sang to her until my voice gave out. I did all of it without you. I know. So don't come into my house and tell me you were wrong. Don't stand in my kitchen and expect me to feel sorry for you because a job you chose over us is about to land but in prison. I'm not asking for pity. I'm asking for the truth. I was in Boston that night. You know I was. An innocent man is about to lose his life because... I know." She closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were clear. Resolved. "I'll think about it. Leave your lawyer's number. I'll call by tomorrow." I wrote James's number on a scrap of paper. My hand was shaking. I set it on the counter and turned to leave. In the doorway, I stopped. I turned back. Sophia was still standing there, watching me with those wide brown eyes. "What's her name?" I asked. My voice was barely audible. Elena hesitated. Then, softly, "Sophia." "Sophia," I repeated. The name tasted like everything I'd lost. I knelt down. Sophia studied me with the fearless curiosity only children possess. She tilted her head, just like Elena did when she was assessing something. "Hi, Sophia," I said. "I'm Marcus. Are you a sad man?" she asked with her childlike voice. I almost laughed. Almost. Yeah. I'm a sad man. Why are you sad? Because I made a big mistake a long time ago, and I'm trying to fix it. Sophia considered this with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. Then she reached into the pocket of her pajamas and pulled out a crumpled dandelion. She held it out to me. You can have this, she said. Mama says flowers make sad people happy. I took the dandelion. My hand was trembling. I looked up at Elena, and for the first time, I saw something shift in her expression. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something. I left the apartment holding a dead dandelion like it was the most precious thing I'd ever owned. Elena called James at 6:14 a.m. the next morning. I'll testify, she said. But I have conditions. I was sitting across from James in his office when he took the call. He put her on speaker. I was at the Fairmont Copley for a translation conference, she continued. I checked in at 8:47 p.m. on October 14th. Marcus Chen was already in the lobby when I arrived. We did not speak. I saw him clearly. That's my testimony. That's the truth. That's exactly what we need, James said carefully. My condition is this. After I testify, Marcus Chen has no contact with me or my daughter. None. This is a transaction. I save him from prison. He leaves us alone. Are we clear? James looked at me. I nodded. Even though the words cut. Even though the idea of walking away from Sophia, walking away again, was already forming a wound I knew wouldn't heal. Clear, I said. The motion hearing was 5 days before sentencing. Judge Patricia Lowell presided. She was the same judge who'd revoked my bail. The same woman who'd looked at me like I was already a prisoner. Elena testified. She was calm, precise, and devastating. She described checking into the hotel. She described seeing me in the lobby. She provided her conference registration, her hotel receipt, her parking garage stub from that evening, all corroborating her presence in Boston at the time of the murder. The prosecutor cross-examined her, tried to paint her as a biased ex-girlfriend trying to save a former lover. Elena shut it down. I'm not here because I care about Marcus Chen, she said, her voice steady as stone. I'm here because the truth matters. He was in Boston that night. I saw him. That's a fact, regardless of how I feel about him personally. Judge Lowell studied her for a long moment. Then she looked at me. The alibi testimony introduces reasonable doubt sufficient to vacate the conviction pending a new trial, she said. Bail is set at $2 million. Mr. Chen, you are not to leave the state of New York. I was free. Conditionally. Temporarily. But free. Outside the courthouse. I found Elena standing by a taxi, her arms wrapped around herself despite the warm day. She looked smaller than she had inside. Testifying had cost her something. Elena. She turned. Her eyes were dry but exhausted. Thank you, I said. Don't. I mean it. You saved my life. I saved an innocent man from prison. That's all. The transaction is complete. We agreed. No contact. I know. But I hesitated. She's my daughter. Elena's face hardened. You forfeited that right 4 years ago. She has my smile. Did you know that? Something shifted in Elena's expression, a crack in the armor she wore so carefully. Of course I know that, she whispered. I see it every single day. Please, I said. I'm not asking for custody. I'm not asking for anything permanent. Just let me see her. Supervised visits. Whatever terms you set. She deserves to know her father. She deserved a father who didn't text message her mother out of existence. I know. But I'm here now. I know that's not enough. But it's all I have. Elena was quiet for a long time. The city moved around us, taxis honking, people rushing past, the world continuing as though two people weren't standing on a sidewalk negotiating the shape of a family. Supervised, she said finally. 1 hour. Saturdays. At the park near my apartment. You don't touch her without my permission. You don't make promises. And if you disappear, even once, this is over. Forever. Thank you. I'm not doing this for you, Marcus. I'm doing this because she asked about you. She's been asking about the sad man every day since you left. She doesn't forget anything. She got in the taxi and was gone. The first Saturday, I arrived 40 minutes early. I sat on the bench nearest the entrance and watched parents chase toddlers across the playground, and I felt like an anthropologist studying a species I'd never belonged to. Elena arrived at exactly 10 a.m. Sophia was wearing overalls and rain boots despite the clear sky. She was carrying the stuffed rabbit I'd seen at the apartment. Elena sat on the opposite end of the bench and nodded toward the playground. Go. You have 1 hour. I knelt down to Sophia's level. Hey, Sophia. Remember me? She studied me with those serious brown eyes. You're the sad man. Are you still sad? Some days. But I'm happy right now. Because I get to see you. Why? It was the most honest question anyone had ever asked me. Why was I here? Why did I care? Why had a dandelion from a 3-year-old made me weep in the back of a taxi? Because I think you're pretty great, I said. And I'd like to be your friend. If that's okay. Sophia considered this. Can you push me on the swings? Yeah, I can do that. Okay, you can be my friend. I pushed her on the swings for 45 minutes. She shrieked with laughter every time I pushed higher. She told me about her stuffed rabbit, named Mr. Flops. Her favorite color, yellow, no. Purple, no. Yellow, and a caterpillar she'd found on the sidewalk that morning that she'd named Professor Wiggle. I listened to every word like they were Supreme Court oral arguments. I memorized her laugh. I memorized the way she pumped her little legs trying to make the swing go by itself. When it was time to leave, Sophia ran back to Elena and announced, Mama, the sad man is actually really funny. Elena looked at me over Sophia's head. Something unreadable in her expression. Is that so? She said. Can he come back next Saturday? Elena hesitated. Then, we'll see. I came back the next Saturday. And the one after that. And the one after that. It was on the 4th Saturday that everything changed. I was walking to the park when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text message. Tell your alibi witness to recant, or she and the kid will have an accident. Attached was a photograph, taken from across the street. Elena and Sophia leaving their apartment that morning. My blood went cold. I called James immediately. He called the police. I called the only other person I trusted. Naomi, I need you. Naomi Torres was a private investigator I'd worked with on a wrongful conviction case years ago. Former NYPD detective. Sharp, relentless, and incorruptible. She picked up on the first ring. Marcus Chen, thought you were in prison. I was. I'm out on bail. Someone's threatening my daughter. Silence. Then, tell me everything. I told her. About Elena. About Sophia. About the text. About the photograph. Someone knows she's your alibi, Naomi said. Someone with resources. Someone who knows your movements. Richard Wolf, I said. The name tasted like poison. He's the senior partner at my old firm. He's the one who. I know who he is. I'll look into it. In the meantime, get them somewhere safe. I called Elena. She didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. I ran the 6 blocks to her apartment. I found her in the hallway outside her door. 2 men, thick-necked, expensive suits, standing too close. One of them was speaking in a low voice I couldn't hear, but Elena's face told me everything. Hey, I shouted. Get away from her. They turned. The taller one smiled. It was the kind of smile that promised violence. Boyfriend, he said. Leave. Now. Marcus, don't, Elena started. The tall one moved fast. A fist into my ribs. I felt something crack. A second punch to my jaw. I went down hard against the hallway wall. I'll deliver the message, the tall one said, straightening his cuffs. Recant the testimony. Or next time, we don't visit you. They walked out calmly, like they'd just delivered a package. I pulled myself up. My ribs screamed. Blood was running from my lip. Elena was pressed against the wall, Sophia in her arms, the little girl's face buried in her mother's neck. Are you okay? I asked. Not about my ribs. About them. You're bleeding, Elena said. Are you okay? We're fine. They didn't touch us. They just, she stopped. Took a breath. They had photos, Marcus. Of me. Of Sophia. At the park. At her school. The anger that rose in me was different from anything I'd ever felt. It wasn't the controlled, strategic anger of a courtroom. It was primal. Protective. The kind of anger that comes when someone threatens your child. My child. We need to move you, I said. Tonight. I'm not leaving my home because of. Elena, please. They know where you live. They know where Sophia goes to school. They have photographs. She looked down at Sophia, who was still hiding in her mother's neck, whimpering softly. I saw the exact moment the fear won over the pride. Where? She asked. Let me handle it. Naomi found the place. A rented cottage in upstate New York, 2 hours north of the city. Off the books. Paid in cash. No digital footprint. Elena and Sophia took the bedroom. I slept on the couch. The first night was silent and tense. Two people in a small space with too much history and not enough trust. But proximity does what distance never could. It forces honesty. On the third night, after Sophia was asleep, Elena came into the living room. She sat in the armchair across from me and wrapped her hands around a mug of tea and looked at me with an expression that had been building for days. "I need to understand something," she said. "Anything. Why? Why did you really do it? And us?" I know what Wolf said. I know about the pressure. But you're a lawyer, Marcus. You argue for a living. You don't do things you don't want to do. So what? It was the question I'd been asking myself for 4 years. The question I'd never been brave enough to answer honestly. Because I was afraid, I said. Of what? Of not being enough. Of being the kid from Queens who got lucky and was about to blow it. My parents sacrificed everything to get me into law school. Everything. And Wolf was offering me the world, the partnership, the prestige, the validation. And you, I stopped. You made me feel like I didn't need any of that. Like I was enough just as I was. And that terrified me. Because if I believed you, if I let myself be the man you saw, then I had to admit that everything I was building was a performance. That the suit and the title and the corner office were all costume. That underneath, I was just a scared kid from Flushing who didn't know who he really was. So you cut out the person who saw you clearly. Yes. And chose the costume. Yes. Elena was quiet for a long time. The tea cooled in her hands. I waited for you to come back, she said finally. For 6 months after that text, I waited. I told myself it was a mistake. That you'd realized what you'd done and you'd come through that door and say you were sorry, and her voice cracked. I would have forgiven you, Marcus. In a heartbeat. I would have forgiven you. I know. But you never came. And then Sophia was born, and I held her, and I looked at her face, and I saw you. And I decided right then that I would never let anyone make her feel like she wasn't enough. Including her own father. I'm sorry. I know you are. I believe that. But sorry doesn't rebuild trust, Marcus. Time does. Actions do. Then let me show you. Let me prove it. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she stood, set down her tea, and went back to the bedroom without another word. But she didn't close the door all the way. Naomi Torres arrived at the safe house 2 days later with a box of files and a look of grim satisfaction. I found something, she said, spreading documents across the kitchen table. Richard Wolf has been embezzling from client trust accounts for 7 years. Over $40 million. David Grant discovered it. Grant was going to go to the authorities. So Wolf killed him and framed you. Can you prove it? Not yet. But I'm close. I've been tracking financial forensics, and there's a pattern in the fund transfers that points directly to Wolf's personal accounts through a series of shell companies. But I need someone who can read the financial language, someone who can trace the money and make it make sense to a jury. Elena, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. I can help. We both looked at her. I translated financial documents for 6 years before I moved to literary translation, she said. Corporate structures, fund transfers, securities filings. I know the language. Elena, you don't have to, I started. They threatened my daughter, she said quietly. I'm involved whether I like it or not. And if I can help put the man who did this in prison, I will. So we worked. 3 people around a kitchen table in upstate New York. Me, the woman I'd betrayed, and a former detective, unraveling the financial web of a man who'd tried to steal my life. Elena was brilliant. She traced the money through 7 shell companies across 4 countries. She identified patterns in the transfers that connected directly to Wolf's personal accounts. She found inconsistencies in the forensic accounting that the prosecution had used against me, data that had been deliberately manipulated to point to my accounts instead of Wolf's. And as we worked, something else happened. Something I hadn't planned and couldn't control. I watched her, not with desire, though she was still the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. I watched her work. The way she focused. The way her brow furrowed when she found something that didn't add up. The way she muttered in Italian when she was frustrated. The way she lit up when a piece of the puzzle clicked into place. This was the woman I'd abandoned. The woman who was raising my daughter alone. The woman who was now, despite everything, sitting next to me and fighting for my freedom. I didn't deserve her. I knew that. But watching her work beside me, I wanted to become someone who did. The breakthrough came from an unexpected place. Kate Morrison was Richard Wolff's former executive assistant. She'd worked at the firm for 12 years before abruptly resigning 3 weeks after David Grant's murder. Naomi tracked her to a small town in Connecticut where she was working at a library and trying to disappear. She's scared, Naomi told us. But she wants to talk. We met at a diner off I-95. Kate was a thin woman in her 50s with nervous eyes and hands that wouldn't stop moving. I knew, she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. About the embezzlement. I found the records 2 years ago. I confronted Wolff. He told me if I said anything, he'd destroy me. And then Grant found out, and she stopped. Swallowed. I heard Wolff on the phone the night before the murder. He said, take care of the Grant problem tonight. Plant the evidence on Chen's accounts. He's the perfect scapegoat. I heard him say it. Why didn't you come forward? Elena asked. Kate's hands shook. Because I have a daughter. She's 12. Wolff told me what would happen to her if I talked. Elena reached across the table and took Kate's hand. I watched the gesture, the quiet solidarity of two mothers protecting their children, and something broke open in my chest. You have my word, Elena said firmly, that we will protect you and your daughter. Marcus and I. She stopped. She'd said Marcus and I. Not Marcus. Not his lawyer. We. I didn't say anything. I didn't dare. But inside, something shifted. Kate gave us everything. Emails. Recorded phone calls. Financial documents she'd copied before she left. Enough evidence to bury Richard Wolff. The new trial lasted 6 days. James Park was magnificent. Elena testified first. Calm, precise, devastating. Then Kate Morrison took the stand and dismantled the prosecution's case from the inside. The financial forensics Elena had traced were entered into evidence. The shell companies. The fund transfers. The deliberate manipulation of data to frame me. A forensic accountant hired by James confirmed everything. On the 5th day, Richard Wolff took the stand in his own defense. He was smooth. He was confident. He was exactly the man I'd spent 6 years trying to impress. The man whose approval I'd traded Elena for. And then James Park destroyed him. Mr. Wolff, can you explain why $3.2 million was transferred from the Grant and Associates Trust account to a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands on October 12th, 2 days before David Grant's murder? I wasn't aware of that transfer. Were you aware that the shell company, Meridian Holdings, was registered to an address that matches your personal residence in Greenwich, Connecticut? Silence. Were you aware that your former assistant, Kate Morrison, recorded a phone call in which you instructed an associate to take care of the Grant problem and plant the evidence on Chen's accounts? The courtroom went silent. Wolff's face drained of color. I'd like to hear that recording, Mr. Park, Judge Lowell said. James played it. Wolff's voice filled the courtroom. Every word, every instruction, every cold, calculated detail of the murder and the frame job. When the recording ended, Judge Lowell turned to the jury. I believe the prosecution has some reconsidering to do, she said. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Not guilty. I was free. Across the courtroom, I saw 2 marshals approach Richard Wolff. I saw the handcuffs come out. I saw the man who had stolen 4 years of my life reduced to the same steel restraints that had once bound me. I looked at Elena, sitting in the gallery. She was holding Sophia on her lap. Sophia was waving at me with both hands, grinning with my smile. Elena wasn't smiling, but she was looking at me with something I hadn't seen in 4 years. Hope. The legal system declared me innocent. But the real trial, the one that mattered, was just beginning. I could have walked away. I was free. My name was cleared. Prestigious firms were already calling, offering positions. I could have returned to Manhattan, put on a new suit, rebuilt my career. Instead, I rented a 1-bedroom apartment in Park Slope, 3 blocks from Elena and Sophia. I showed up every Saturday at 10 a.m. Not because we had an agreement. Not because Elena had asked. Because Sophia expected me, and I would not break a promise to my daughter. The first few weeks were careful. Elena watched me from a distance as I took Sophia to the park, read her books. helped her build block towers that she immediately knocked down with gleeful destruction. But I didn't stop at Saturdays. I started bringing groceries on Wednesdays. Just left them at the door with a note. Thought you might need these. I fixed the leaking faucet Elena had mentioned. I replaced the smoke detector batteries. I shoveled the sidewalk when it snowed. I didn't ask for recognition. I didn't ask for gratitude. I just showed up. Your lawyer called, Elena said one Saturday, watching me push Sophia on the swings. Sullivan and Cromwell wants you. 7 figures. Corner office. I know. And I said no. She frowned. Why? Because I already have everything I need right here. Sophia chose that moment to jump off the swing and yell Superman and land in a heap in the wood chips, laughing hysterically. I ran to scoop her up, checking for scrapes while she giggled. Elena watched us. I could feel her eyes on my back. What are you doing, Marcus? She asked quietly when Sophia ran off to the slide. What do you mean? You moved 3 blocks away. You show up every week. You fix things. You bring food. You turn down a 7-figure job. What is this? I sat on the bench next to her. Not too close. She still had boundaries, and I respected everyone. This is me being present, I said. For the first time in my life. Not because I need something. Not because I'm performing. Just because this is where I want to be. Why? Because she's my daughter. And I stopped. You're the most extraordinary person I've ever known. And I wasted 4 years pretending otherwise. Elena was quiet for a long time. I started therapy, I said. 3 weeks ago. Twice a week. I'm trying to understand why I made the choices I made. Not to excuse them. Just to make sure I never make them again. Therapy, she repeated. Like the word was in a foreign language. I know. The guy who communicates via breakup text is going to therapy. The irony isn't lost on me. And for the first time in 4 years, Elena Rossi smiled at me. It was small, tentative, gone almost immediately. But it was there. I opened a small legal practice. Not on Wall Street. Not in a glass tower. A 2-room office above a bakery in Brooklyn, focused on wrongful conviction cases. My first client was a man named Darius Washington, convicted of armed robbery based on a single eyewitness identification. 7 years into a 15-year sentence. I took his case pro bono. Naomi and I investigated. We found the real perpetrator. We filed the motion. Darius walked free on a Tuesday in March. His mother wept in the courtroom. His daughter, he was meeting her for the first time. She'd been born 3 months after his conviction, hid behind her grandmother's legs, and stared at him with huge eyes. He knelt down, the way I'd knelt in Elena's apartment, and said, "Hi, I'm your dad." I went home that night and sat in my apartment and cried. Not for Darius. For me. For all the years I'd wasted chasing a version of success that meant nothing. Elena heard about it. I don't know how. Maybe from James, maybe from Naomi. She didn't mention it directly. But the following Saturday, when I arrived at the park, she was sitting on my bench. The one closest to the entrance. She'd brought 2 coffees. Sit down, she said. Sophia will be out in a minute. She's insisting on wearing her princess costume to the park. I sat. She handed me a coffee. Our fingers touched. Neither of us pulled away. I'm proud of you, she said. For what you did for that man. It's not enough. It'll never make up for. I didn't say it was enough. I said I'm proud of you. Those are different things. I looked at her. She was looking at the playground, where Sophia was emerging in a full Elsa costume, complete with plastic tiara, regardless of the fact that it was 40 degrees outside. Can I take you to dinner? I asked. The words came out before I could stop them. Elena didn't answer immediately. She watched Sophia stomp through a puddle in her Elsa dress, and then turned to me. I'm scared, she said. Of me. Of hoping. Last time I hoped. I ended up alone and pregnant in a bathroom. I know. And I can't promise I won't hurt you again. Anyone who promises that is lying. But I can promise that I will show up. Every day. And I will keep showing up until you believe it. She took a breath. Dinner. One dinner. And if you send me a breakup text afterward, I will end you. I laughed. It felt strange, like a muscle I hadn't used in years. Deal, I said. I took her to a small Italian restaurant in Carroll Gardens, the kind of place with handwritten menus and candles and wine bottles. Nervous doesn't begin to describe how I felt. My hands were sweating. I'd changed shirts 3 times. She wore a red dress. Her hair was down. She looked exactly like the woman I'd fallen in love with 4 years ago, and also like a stranger, someone stronger, fiercer, more certain of who she was. We talked, really talked, not about the past, not about the case, not about Sophia, though all of those things hovered at the edges. We talked about who we were now. She told me about the translation work she'd been doing. She'd just finished a novel from Italian that was being published by a major house. She told me about her dream of starting a small press focused on translated literature. She told me about the women in her life, friends who'd held her up when she was falling. I told her about Darius, about the other wrongful conviction cases, about the feeling of watching someone walk free and knowing you'd made a real difference, not in a quarterly report, but in a human life. You've changed, she said. I'm trying to. No, you have changed. The man I knew wouldn't have turned down Sullivan and Cromwell. He wouldn't be sitting in a two-room office above a bakery. He wouldn't have fixed my faucet without being asked. Maybe the man you knew was always a performance. Maybe this is who I actually am. Maybe, she said, and smiled. And this time, the smile stayed. 6 months after the trial. A Saturday in the park. Sophia was on the swings. Elena was on the bench. I was standing, because I couldn't sit still, because my heart was beating so hard I was afraid it would crack my ribs again. Elena. She looked up. I know I don't deserve you. I know I don't deserve Sophia. I know I can't undo what I did. But I'm asking anyway. I took a breath. Will you marry me? She stared at me. Not for legal reasons this time. I said quickly. Not as a strategy. Because I love you. Because you made me real. Because every day I spend with you and Sophia is the best day of my life. And I want every day that comes after to be the same. Her eyes were shining. Not with tears, with something harder to name. For years of pain, of single motherhood, of building walls so high no one could climb them. And now this man, the man who'd caused all of it, standing in front of her, asking her to let him in. You broke my heart, she said. I know. Shattered it. Into pieces so small I couldn't find them all. I know. And now you want me to give it back to you. Yes. And I will protect it this time. I swear it. Your swears. I know. My swears mean nothing. So don't listen to my words. Watch what I do. I've been showing up for 6 months. I'll show up for the next 60 years if you let me. Sophia ran over. Mama, why are you crying? Elena wiped her eyes. Because the sad man asked me a question, baby. What question? Elena looked at me. A long, searching look that held everything. The anger, the hurt, the hope, the love she'd never fully extinguished no matter how hard she'd tried. Yes, she said. I dropped to my knees right there in the park. Sophia threw her arms around my neck. Elena knelt beside us, and I wrapped my arms around both of them, my daughter, my future wife, and I held on like they were the only real things in a world full of illusions. We married in June. A small ceremony in Elena's parents' backyard in New Jersey. Antonio Rossi spent the first hour glaring at me and the last hour clapping me on the shoulder and saying, You heard her again. I know people. Maria Rossi cried through the entire ceremony and then fed me until I couldn't move. Sophia was the flower girl. She threw petals with the intensity of a major league pitcher and then announced to the entire reception that the sad man is my daddy now, and he's not even sad anymore. My sister Claire stood as my witness. She held my hand and whispered, I'm glad you finally found your way home. Elena's vows were simple. You hurt me, but you healed too. I choose you, not the man who sent that text. The man standing in front of me, the one who shows up. My vows. I lost everything to find what actually matters. You, Sophia, this family. I will spend every day of my life proving I'm worthy of the second chance you gave me. Sophia fell asleep on my shoulder at the reception. She was heavy and warm and smelled like the flowers she'd been throwing. Elena leaned against my other side and put her hand on my chest. Thank you for coming back, she whispered. Thank you for letting me in. For months later, Elena sat me down at the kitchen table with a strange expression on her face. She slid a small object across the table. A pregnancy test. 2 lines. Are you? I started. Yeah. I started laughing. Then crying. Then both at the same time. I missed Sophia's first 3 years, I said. I'm not missing a single day of this one. I know, she said. That's why I said yes. A year later, I sat in my office above the bakery. 2 rooms, a desk I'd bought at a yard sale, and a wall covered in photographs of people who'd walked free because someone finally fought for them. Darius Washington, Maria Santos, James Holden. 17 names. 17 lives reclaimed from a system that had failed them. On my desk, a framed photo of Elena, Sophia, and baby Leo, 3 months old, with Elena's dark eyes and my stubborn chin. Sophia had insisted on holding him for the photo and had the most serious expression I'd ever seen on a 4-year-old. James Park stopped by that afternoon. He looked at the photo, then at the wall of exonerations, then at me. "You know," he said, "Sullivan and Cromwell called again. They want you to head their new pro bono division. 7 figures. Full benefits." "James." I know, but I promised I'd tell you." I looked at the photo of my family. Elena, Sophia, Leo, a woman who saved me twice, once in a courtroom, once in her heart. A daughter who gave a sad man a dandelion. A son I'd be there for from the very beginning. "I'm already rich," I said. James shook his head, smiling. "You've changed, Marcus." "No," I said. "I finally became who I was supposed to be." He left. I turned back to my desk. The late afternoon sun came through the window, warm and golden, and I could hear the bakery below, the hum of ovens, the murmur of conversation, the small sounds of ordinary life. My phone buzzed. "Elena, Sophia wants to know if the sad man is coming home for dinner. She made you a card. It's mostly glitter. You will find glitter in your food. Consider yourself warned." I smiled, grabbed my jacket, turned off the lights. On my way out, I passed the dandelion. It was framed now, crumpled and dried, pinned behind glass on my office wall. A dead flower from a 3-year-old's pajama pocket. The most valuable thing I'd ever received. I locked the door and walked home.